Why go it alone? Crop West Insurance gives you expert support, better commissions, and in-depth educational retreats that set you up for success. They've spent 60 years perfecting the art of growing crop insurance agencies, and now it's your turn to join the movement. Crop West Insurance, where agents come to thrive. To find out more, please visit cropwestinsurance.com. Crop West Insurance Incorporated is an equal opportunity provider and employer. Hey there, and welcome to the Crop Insurance Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Rydell, a third-generation crop insurance agent, and I'm here to help you navigate the ins and outs of crop insurance. It's what my family's been doing for generations, so you're in good hands. Our goal here is simple, to educate our listeners. Crop insurance can be complex and overwhelming, but I believe that understanding it is crucial for every farmer. So whether you're a seasoned farmer looking to stay updated or a newcomer seeking guidance, this podcast is for you. Before we dive into today's topic, we just want to take a moment to acknowledge the devastating wildfires impacting so many in California. Our thoughts are with the families, farmers, and communities facing these challenges. While our podcast focuses on crop insurance, we know that natural disasters affect every aspect of agriculture and livelihoods. We're hoping for safety and relief for everyone affected. Welcome back to today's episode of the Crop Insurance Podcast. Today's an extra special episode as we're wrapping up our first mini-series and we're introducing a brand new crop insurance product for California grape growers, the Fire Insurance Protection Smoke Index Endorsement, also known as FIP-SI. Now, if you haven't tuned in to part 1 or part 2 yet, I highly recommend you go back and check them out first, as we'll be covering some information in this last mini-series episode that we covered in episodes 1 and 2. If you're just joining us to learn about FIP-SI, you can hang in there as we'll get to that here in just a moment. So for those of you that have listened to our previous episodes and you did the homework in episode 1, so you had some ideas of what you thought the coverages we might provide for our fictitious grower Mark were, I hope you were able to check some of those off your list and maybe were able to think about some different things you might like to add to the coverage options we presented Mark in episode 2, as there were some gaps there, and there are some products out there on the market that can help fill those gaps. So make sure you hit us up on social media or our website and let us know your thoughts on what you think we could provide for Mark to help fill some of those gaps, and let us know what you think about these mini-series episodes. So with that, let's jump right into part 3 of our mini-series. So as I mentioned at the top of this episode, we're in part 3 of a 3-part mini-series. So let's take a look back at our fictitious grower Mark and what we have structured for him in terms of different crop insurance coverages to add to his platform. We've got his APH policy, where we've added the quality loss option, yield adjustment option, and YC options, or yield cup option, to better help his yield history and improve his proved yields over time. We know that Mark had a contract out there on his grapes, so we were able to add the contract price addendum to help him lock in those higher contract prices. And now, Mark wasn't just concerned with the current year's grape production, he was also concerned if he would happen to lose his vines where he grows his grapes, as the APH policy is only covering the current year grape yields. He needed a way to protect those grapevines. And so he looked at taking out a grapevine policy. And in going over that grapevine policy, he looked at the occurrence loss option to enhance his coverage, and he liked that as well. So we added that to his grapevine policy. Now, Mark was also considering his SCO and ECO options, but ultimately he opted out of SCO since his coverage level on his APH policy was at the 85% coverage level, and SCO goes to 86% coverage level. So there's not a big gap there, so he didn't feel SCO was necessary. But he did like ECO, as that went up to 95%. And so that band of coverage is from 95% down to his coverage level of 85%. Now, Mark understands the area risk nature of the SCO and ECO options as we spent some time explaining that to him. One other thing that Mark had heard of, but he didn't know much about, was the new FIP-SI endorsement, or the Fire Insurance Protection Smoke Index endorsement. He was curious about it, and he didn't know much about it, so we need to educate him on that. And the biggie is he cannot have both ECO and FIP-SI. He can only have one or the other. He could combine it with SCO if he had that, but since he opted out on SCO, he's really just concerned with ECO. So we need to explain FIP-SI to him so he can better understand it and make an educated decision. Speaking of the Fire Insurance Protection and Smoke Index endorsement, or FIP-SI endorsement, it's a brand new crop insurance endorsement that's available in select California counties for the 2025 crop year. So it's brand new. And what it does is it provides additional protection against smoke damage. Now, the sales closing date or the sales closing deadline for this product is January 31st, which is same as Mark's baseline APH policy. And in order to add the FIP-SI endorsement, you must have an underlying policy like this APH policy. Now, what's kind of unique about FIP-SI is you can carry catastrophe coverage and add this endorsement, which is kind of unusual, as typically you can't add these types of endorsements to a CAT policy, but with FIP-SI you can. Now, like SCO and ECO, FIP-SI is an area-based plan. Now, if you don't know what that means, we'll give you a kind of a brief overview, but make sure you go back and listen to our SCO and ECO podcast episodes back in season 1 as we explain it a little further. But the bottom line that Mark needs to understand, or anyone needs to understand for that matter, is that with these area-based plans, you may experience a loss on your operation, but your area or your county might not hit that loss trigger, and you won't receive a payment on that endorsement or that product. Now, the opposite is true as well. You could have a great year and not experience a loss on your APH policy, but your county might experience a loss, or your area, and so you would receive a loss under that area risk plan. Now, with FIP-SI, when it comes to loss payments, another unique feature of it is you don't have to turn in a claim or a timely notification of loss to your insurance provider, as the system automatically does it, and the payouts are automatic. So there's no need to file a claim, no paperwork to fill out at claim time. It's all determined by federal crop system, and if there's a loss, the payouts are generated automatically. All right, now that we know when you need to add this endorsement and how to add it to your policy, and we spoke about the losses being triggered automatically, so let's talk about what is a loss. How is a loss triggered? What is this policy all about? Well, indemnities under the FIP-SI endorsement, they're triggered when a smoke event in a county meets or exceeds the FCIC determined county loss trigger. Now, if you look in the county actuarials for Napa Valley, California, the minimum smoke events is 13 to start triggering a loss. And so I guess let's backtrack a little bit here and what exactly is a smoke event? What counts as a smoke event? Well, NOAA's hazard mapping system, their HMS, it detects significant smoke coverage in a county. The smoke must have at least 4 consecutive hours in a single day, and the events are county-based, not individual farm-based. If the number of events surpasses the trigger level, a payout is made. So again, the county loss trigger, that's the minimum number of smoke events required for an indemnity to be paid. Now, this is going to vary by county, so you're going to want to check your county actuarials, but just for argument's sake, as we're looking at Mark's operation in Napa Valley, it's going to take at least 13 smoke events in order for a loss to start to get triggered. Now, when you look at when the losses or when the smoke events are being counted, it's important to note when the insurance period is, because that's when they're counting those smoke events. In Napa County, California, for the 2025 crop year, that insurance period is from June 1st to November 10th. So that's when federal crop is going to be, quote unquote, adding up those smoke events. At the end of the insurance period for federal crop, their system is going to automatically check that smoke loss factor chart that's found in the county actuarials. And then it's going to use that smoke loss factor when considering cumulative smoke events. And they're going to use that later in the loss calculation. So I hope you're following along here and it's not getting to the eyes kind of glazing over. So just a quick recap. We know when we can add it, how we can add it. We know all that good stuff. We know when the insurance period is. We know what a smoke event is and how they add those up to determine if there's a loss. So let's look at how loss payments are calculated, as that's going to tell you how this coverage works. So your FIP-SI loss payment is going to be determined using a variety of factors, but really it just boils down to two very important terms. You're going to have your smoke protection amount, or SPA, aka your deductible, aka your FIP-SI liability. The other term we're going to look at is the payment factor. What percentage of your SPA will you get paid? Because what we're going to do is figure out what your SPA amount is and then multiply it times your payment factor, and that will be your loss or your indemnity. Now, when looking at the SPA calculation, that formula is simply your expected crop value times your smoke coverage range times your smoke coverage percentage. So let's break down those terms so you can understand what we're talking about there. Now, on your expected crop value, what you're going to do on that is you're going to take your APH policy's liability, and then you're going to divide that by your APH policy's coverage level. And then you're going to divide that by your APH policy's percentage of price selection. Now, some of that might be a little confusing, but typically when you sign up for an APH policy and you're in a buy-up coverage level, so like Mark is at the 85% coverage level, his APH policy's percentage of price selection is 100%. So that's not going to affect his expected crop value. But if you're at the CAP policy, you would have a lower APH policy price percentage election. So you're going to have to pay attention to that figure. Now, when you take your APH policy's liability divided by your coverage level, that is going to get you your expected crop value. Now, in Mark's situation, what we're going to do is we're going to say that his expected crop value is $500,000. Now, how do we come up with that $500,000? Again, we took the liability from his APH policy, which we're just going to say is $425,000. So we took $425,000, we divided that by 85%, and then we divided that by his price selection percentage of 100%, or just 1. And if you take 425,000 divided by 85% divided by 1, you get 500,000. So now that we know what that is, we're going to save his expected crop value to plug into that SPA calculation. And now we need to come up with his smoke coverage range. You're going to take your elected FIP-SI coverage level, which is 95%, and you're going to subtract your coverage level on your underlying policy or your APH policy, which in this case is 85%. So then that smoke coverage range is 95% minus 85%. So in this example, it's 10%. So now that we know the smoke coverage range, now we're going to need to figure out what the smoke coverage percentage is. Well, on the smoke coverage percentage, when you sign up for the FIP-SI endorsement, you can choose a range anywhere from 1 to 100%. Now, there's a variety of reasons why you wouldn't choose 100%, but the main one would probably be cost. That's the main one that comes to mind. But when looking at the FIP-SI endorsement, I would recommend taking the 100% level. And the main reason being is that if you don't take that 100% coverage level, it's just going to reduce your FIP-SI liability. because now we go back to our SPA calculation, which is expected crop value times smoke coverage range times smoke coverage percentage. So now we have 500,000 times 10% times 100%. So Mark's SPA is going to be $50,000. So what that means is the most he could get paid under his FIP-SI endorsement is $50,000. Now, if he has different coverage levels, different expected values on his crop, that number is going to change by quite a bit. Now, remember when we spoke about the two factors you need to know when thinking about how payments are calculated, we needed to know the smoke protection amount, or the SPA, which we just figured out. Now we're going to take that times your payment factor, and that's how you're going to calculate your loss or your indemnity. Now, the payment factor, that is your smoke loss factor divided by your smoke coverage range. So the smoke loss factor, that's kind of a simple one, is you're just going to go into your county actuarials and look at the table that's based on cumulative smoke events. So when you look at that table in the county actuarials for Napa Valley County in California for 2025, you'll notice that in that table, it counts from 13 up to 48. So it requires a minimum of 13 smoke events in order to start paying a loss or to start showing a smoke loss factor. And then once you get to 48, it goes to a 48 plus category. So let's look at this example for Mark in Napa Valley, and let's say that there's 32 events that occur during his insurance period. If you look at that table, the smoke loss factor is 0.2031. So given Mark's calculations, we're going to take that smoke loss factor of 0.2031 and we're going to divide it by his smoke coverage range, which was 0.1. Now, if you take 0.2031 and you divide it by 0.1, it's going to equal 2.031. Now, it's important to note here that the payment factor is capped at 100%. So he's not going to get paid 2.031 times his SPA. It's going to be reduced to 100%. So in this example, with 32 smoke events, Mark would get paid 100% of his SPA, or $50,000. Now that's going to bring us to our key takeaways from this episode, or from the FIP-SI endorsement, is the lower your APH coverage level, in theory, the higher your SPA is going to be, but you're going to have lower liability on your APH policy. So the higher your APH coverage level, the lower your SPA is going to be under the FIP-SI endorsement. However, you're going to have more coverage on your underlying APH policy. So you really need to understand that the FIP-SI endorsement is an area-based plan, so those individual losses don't necessarily guarantee payouts because of the area-based nature. Now, when you're looking at FIP-SI versus ECO, as you'll remember, Mark was trying to decide between the two. They each have their pros and cons. They pay out differently depending on what your underlying policy's coverage level is. They pay out differently in regards to the perils that they're paying out for. The premiums are going to be different because their subsidies are different on the different coverage levels. There's a lot that you have to take into account when comparing FIP-SI and ECO. At the end of the day, the farmer's going to have to decide what their risk tolerance is and how it fits into their risk management or their risk mitigation strategy. Now for some final thoughts on our first ever mini-series. So this mini-series, it wasn't just about insurance policies. It was about risk management strategies and helping you understand that crop insurance is not a one-size-fits-all program. I hope that you're walking away with some new insights on how to structure your policies for your farm's unique needs. Understanding that crop insurance is a platform and one that is not the same as your neighbor's. It's going to be tailored towards your risk management or your risk tolerance preferences. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you have any questions or just want to chat, make sure you hit us up on our social media or visit our website. Until next time, we hope you stay covered, stay prepared, and happy farming. From my family to yours, thank you for joining me today. Explore more at cropinsurancepodcast.com, where you'll find episodes, articles, and tools to help you make the most of your coverage. Be sure to subscribe and share with your friends and neighbors. Remember, this info is just a guide. For specific rules, please refer to the Crop Insurance Handbook and your appropriate crop provisions. This institution is an equal opportunity provider and employer.